And I'm sorry, but you cannot tell me that sports writers are intently watching every single game. Actually, the Joe was an all-coaching general manager now, but I've asked for a long time. That would be just a figment of my imagination. It would seem to me that that would be a much more accurate read on how players are doing around the league. I think sports writers are not privy to the information, nor do they have the time to what have taken a deep dive into game film of every single game of every single week. So I take it with a grain of salt. I don't need a lot for players. All Tony's much more than global. Lane was upset. So, but Jordan Mailata was pleased. Second team all pro for Jordan Mailata. Recognition for Jordan. Jalen Carter, second team all pro. Who we missing? And then it was Lee Johnson, Jordan, Jack, Jalen, and AJ Brown, which is great respect to AJ Brown missing all the games we missed and having some, numbers that were not typical AJ Brown for the yard out respect was certainly something that he appreciated very much. Something we read all about.
And just to put players on the scene, Lane was Cam Jury is getting his first
Great.
Then Dickerson, which was so three offensive linemen on the total and two on the all-pro. Say Jalen Carter and Zach. Saquon together so much tackling. But
Howie Roseman signs both Zach Ball and Saquon. Which is the, for lack of a better term, most impressive veteran of Howie Roseman?
I really like him. Also, I'm asking you,
Is that which one? Saquon Barkley or Zach Ball? Who is the more impressive signing for Howie Roseman?
the one that just is a complete shock is Zach Ball was in the start. I asked one of your clients and your friends, Jared Anderson, who were at coaching school. Everybody sees these players at or is a lot of but so that is the spectacular part. The thing that give me a little bit of hesitation to for how it was actually a team effort. Because I think we brought Andrew had a big part of things for me to carry. Maybe we can play well to scratch, but there are two effective signs as well. I will also the draft is as we go through the years around our fourth season, we don't have your rookie team yet of rookie of the year, but we appreciate it. What do you think? It was so, and 33, Deshaun, or Deshaun, the genie, Cooper, the genie, especially since he was, I guess, just his first year, career, also seems like the first team.
I agree. I think Howie failed, and now he's not really in the top consideration for NFL Executive of the Year. But when I think back to when he's won NFL Executive of the Year, 2017 season, I believe also 2022, I would put this year's reading of the roster right up there and the moves that he has made. And I'll go all the way down the list, and I'll include a guy like Zach Ball. Corey Burks, who he brings in, and set the tone yesterday in the playoff where the Eagles might force him to fumble early kickoff, and then replaces, unfortunately, the Kobe Dean, and has a really good game, and is going to be counted on heavily moving forward. Howie is on very few of the.
Well, that's interesting because he actually seems like being a Go ahead. No, Larry Williams, and his price, his price like this. We had all those others. You miss them. And then when you hit so strong and unbelievable, it's not just but Eagles fans have to revel in the fact that they had a playoff team next year. They didn't take 2 years ago, 1 year ago, 5 years ago. And the GM got their swing. And we have to get back and give it another chance to hopefully things go well over the next couple of weeks. Need a third Super Bowl second year.
Would be absolutely bold. The roster of the Eagles are certainly the defense is getting into the game a little bit. The defense is championship caliber. I think we've all seen that throughout the season. It is no fluke that the Eagles shut down Jordan Love. And Jordan Love, 3 interceptions, 4 total turnovers by the Packers. The Eagles have taken the football away 14 times in the last 3 games. That the interception that Love threw, that Darius Slay intercepted, was, I believe, his first giveaway in 409 offensive snaps. So it's not like Jordan Love came in as a turnover machine. The Eagles defense just turned it over.
And they've done it over and over again. The biggest turn is Stafford. He's a turnover. Poor enough to starting to turnover playbook. First making our guest a couple of weeks ago. Somebody like Jeremiah Johnson. We had such a
Our guest earlier this season.
We have had
Every time we mention a player who's been on the show, I make sure we
and there are a lot of guys that all contribute. And you made a mention before about the depth of this roster. I said to you, I don't think this team is going to succeed. Potentially, we'll go down as the last 3 years. And I'm just so excited about what they've done and what it's and also the two amongst the two are the offensive who both up for each other. There's many things to me, the biggest question what can that do? A lot of personnel turnover, new coordinator, and how much time do you put in school to become specialist? I was very confident with the offensive. But the defense was really not surprised that it's a major question. It wasn't just answered, it was just so bad. One of the best defenses in the Eagles' history, and one of the best defenses.
With this perspective, 1 year ago, the Eagles were preparing to play for the AFC wild card playoff game, the Monday night game in Tampa, with Matt Patricia as the defensive coordinator, having replaced Sean Desai. And I remember thinking that, okay, it was really a tough stretch down the final of the season. But boy, the Eagles said, all right, things this week is all turn around. And then that game began, and Philadelphia's defensive players were running into each other. They were physical. They were giving up gaping holes in the pass game and the run game. And eventually, were blown out by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So what do? You keep your head coach, and you surround your CEO head coach with better coordinators. And they go out, they get Nick Fangio, who had been in the team sold late 2022. And Nick had just been dismissed by Randy Moss. And the word was he didn't relate to young players. And so you bring a guy like Nick and you go, just a relic of good defense, but how good were the defense? Really impressive resume. And you kind of think you bring in like, people questioning this or questioning that. And then they open the season in Green Bay and they give up 7 plays of 20 plus yards. I think 4 plays of 30 plus yards, 83 with a 70-yard run, 70-yard kick. It was insane what was happening. As the game has been go by, Baker Mayfield in week 4 carves up the Eagles with a quick 3-step drop, take the ball out. Eagles look really bad on defense. And then all of a sudden, we're back to the back. And Cooper DT replaces Avante Maddox. And the Eagles tighten things up. And better and better and better and better and better. And all of a sudden, Gerald, we would say, okay, well, they've been good quarterback with Rams. That'll be the real test. Oh, well, they ran to Brewer. Not my great. There's been a reason to speak with Lamar Jackson. We're going to see things on defense for real. When they shut Lamar Jackson and Brady. It's on, it's on, it's on. But the only punishments that they had, fourth quarter against Washington, very early in the Dallas game, and I thought the defense was tired, and that's why I thought the benefits of taking that quote-unquote bye week against the Giants to not only help the offense at the same time, but the defense. We saw it.
But I was giving the defense a little bit of yesterday because I think we should totally said his defense is very good. And if you look back and you trace his history, he's completely retired. Remember, he was here as a consultant. In the Super Bowl season 2 years ago. And he was a big part of their meetings and strategies. And unfortunately, at that point, they did not offer him the D coordinator job, and he went down to Miami. And
well, the timing wasn't right. They thought
correct.
Jonathan Gannon was going to stay. And in the meantime, Fangio took the DC job in Miami.
Which might have been the biggest loss for the Eagles after the Super Bowl season. We can blame Jonathan Gannon maybe for last year to some extent. But we went through. And so in the time of the end of the near miss Super Bowl of 2022 season, Fangio was going. Back yet or playing yet. You had a rookie starting the corner. You had CJ returning to play safety. None of the rookies or the young defensive linemen had established himself yet. Yeah. And you had two new linebackers, and Nakobe Dean.
Changes at all three levels, no question.
And so it seemed like it needed just a little bit of time, but to the level it changed into is unbelievable. You didn't even mention, what they did on the road against Joe Burrow and Cincinnati. It was just every test that came up, they didn't just pass with flying colors. They annihilated their opponents, and it was fabulous to watch week after week.
And what you've seen from this Eagles defense that's really, really impressive is improvement, and that speaks to the quality of the assistant coaches, the position coaches. When somebody like Nolan Smith takes the jump that he has taken from year one to year two, yesterday 2 quarterback sacks. I think he had 5 tackles.
I'm going to give you his stat line because it's unbelievable. And this is a guy who was not being considered by anybody going into the season or really talked about. And he yesterday was just a star out there. And he has been getting better and better all the time. 3 tackles, which was 4 assists and 7 combos. 2 sacks.
7 total tackles.
Yeah, 7. I'm sorry. 3 solo tackles, 4 assists for a combination of 7. 2 sacks for 17 yards, which are big losses. 2 tackles for loss, which are not the sacks, as well as 2 quarterback hits. And that is, and he's throwing a special team tackle. And that is such a dominant performance.
Sacking a quarterback in Jordan Love who had been sacked 14 times the entire season. And he did it with power. He did it with speed. He did it with relentlessness. He chases down people. He backside hustle is tremendous. He plays with a ferocity that you want to see. He has improved his repertoire of moves. He is an extremely confident young man, and I think bristled at the idea that he was not going to be a money player. And so he has come back with a chip on his shoulder. Brandon Graham goes down. This kid, Nolan Smith, steps up, and the Eagles, at the very time they needed it, got the edge pass rush, because that is your biggest defensive concern with this team. Do they have enough punch in the pass rush off the edge? And Nolan Smith answered that question emphatically yesterday at Lincoln Financial Field. Great performance from him.
To take it further, okay, you made the great point about Brandon Graham, who was having a terrific season until he got hurt at midseason. You also had lost Hassan Reddick from last year's team. They went out and signed Bryce Huff, who has not really worked out. And Nolan Smith, the guy that nobody was really counting on, at least from the outside, goes and has this season. And on top of that, Dave, as you talk about, depth and rotation, because D linemen rotate a lot, but the Eagles have started to use a couple of their guys all the time on a regular basis. What do you think percentage-wise Nolan Smith played yesterday? It's a spectacularly high percentage.
I don't remember him coming out, to be honest with you.
He played 88%, but that's just because of situational things, and he does. But that is a lot.
What did Jalen Carter play? I have not seen the snap count.
Jalen's been up near 100% a lot of the year. He played 94%. Those are unbelievable numbers. Now, I think there's a lot of depth here, but if you can rely on those guys and they're playing with high motor all game long, how much better off are you?
Young legs win in sports, people, for all you Sixers fans out there. The young legs win.
We're going to cover a lot of territory today. That's one
yesterday, the defense, the special team started off. The defense carried it through. The offense did just enough to win the game. I know Jalen Hurts wasn't great, but 0 turnovers. Certainly there was some rust. Started off with a great pass protection, first possession, 4-man pass rush, holds it, finds Jahan Dotson back in the end zone, touchdown, Eagles, and then
EAGLAES.
yeah, then 10-0 lead, and then a long period of dryness offensively until late in the third quarter, early in the fourth. Philadelphia finally got it going.
All right, Dave, you mentioned a few things as you tend to cover so much territory in your loaded comments. Going into that game, I felt pretty good about the Eagles' chances. The only real concern was Jalen Hurts hadn't played for a few weeks, basically 3 weeks from the last time he had played, and he suffered a concussion. And we know concussions can be so tricky, especially since it didn't seem like the hit that he got hurt on was so bad against Washington, but he came out, almost came back in, got pulled, and then it was lingering longer than you'd like to see. You just don't know, on top of the potential rust from not playing. So I thought that was just a potential issue. And then what do? They force the turnover in the opening kickoff, and they have a short drive and go up 7-0 and really never look back, even though they didn't completely open up till late.
Yeah, and that's what happens in playoff football. And look, I know that the topic is that the Eagles' offense needs to be better. Of course it does. Jalen needs to be sharper. They need to have more explosive plays. I've always been screaming for years and years about chunk plays. You have to have them in the NFL. You can't run, short pass. You need to stretch out the defense. And so there's things to work on. There's no question about it. But they didn't turn the ball over. They kept in front of the sticks. They won the field position battle. And they won the fourth quarter once again. And that is something the Eagles have consistently done this season.
But what Jalen has done, in my opinion, Dave, that has really made him advance during his career. He gets a lot of criticism. Dave, I'm out in the crowd yesterday, and man, they are all over Jalen. It is tough.
For example, tell me.
Really on him on every. There was a stretch of, I think, 4 straight possessions that ended in punts and not a whole lot of yardage, and they were on him for that. I didn't feel like his passing was so off. I felt like they were playing the offense pretty close to the vest. And I mean, in the second half, he was 7 for 8 for like 93 yards in the second half alone. So they were just kind of playing close to the vest and seemingly being efficient to me. And the one time that they really needed to do anything was when it got cut to 16-10 in the third quarter. It was, I guess, fourth quarter at that point. It was just at the start of the fourth quarter. They went right down the field. It culminated in the great touchdown by Dallas Goedert, but he had some big hits on that. Otherwise, as I look at this team, the real key through the season, and this is with explosive receivers in Devontae and A.J. Brown and a great tight end who was hurt for, unfortunately, part of the season in Dallas Goedert, but you had the back in Barkley. You say you can't just run. But when you have Barkley, it does change the way you play the game because you want to make sure he gets enough rushes. And with that offensive line, and I really saw the Eagles' key to this team being so good was the fact that the defense was incredible. The offensive line is the best in the league. Barkley was phenomenal, and they didn't turn the ball over. More than anything, those were the keys. And I could see trying to play that way. No, I don't disagree. As you advance and play better opponents, either the winner of this game tonight, the Rams or the Vikings, and then if you have to go to Detroit, you'll have to do a little bit more. But as long as you don't turn the ball over and are efficient, the defense plays like that, they're going to have a great chance in every game.
Interesting statistic. Jalen Hurts, when there was no blitz, according to NFL Next Gen stats, 10 of 12. 108 yards and 2 touchdowns. Isn't that interesting?
It's really interesting.
So I mean, obviously the formula is blitz Jalen Hurts, and so they're going to have an answer, and where's the hot routes and so forth. And in his career, he has now tied Nick Foles for the most 100-plus passer rating. He's had a 100-plus passer rating in 4 of his 6 playoff games in his career.
Well,
so when he has a bad game, if that is a bad game for Jalen Hurts, the Eagles have a dang good shot of winning the Super Bowl, because you hope it's not to that level, that there's more to come with Jalen Hurts. And if that's the case, 2 touchdown passes, 0 interceptions, and a passer rating of 111. Count me in.
I mean, and people are thinking it's a bad game out there. I've got no
because the I do understand that the expectations are high, the weapons are great, the receivers are there. I didn't necessarily think that the receivers were open a lot yesterday. Certainly on the fake tush push, AJ was open down the field. Devontae was open on a play. I didn't think the offense, as you said, Gerald, was kind of pedantic and very much.
I did not say the word pedantic.
I know I did. It was not as involved as we have seen some things that the Eagles have done with Kellen as the offensive coordinator. It was a very basic approach, and I think that played into it. And I think the coaches were smart. They realized that Jalen Hurts had missed the last 2.5 weeks while he was sidelined with a concussion, and that when he practiced during the week, A.J. Brown was out there very minimal amount of time, and Devontae Smith suffered the lower back injury. He missed a lot of practice time as well. So I get it. First game in, first wild card win at home for the Eagles in, I believe, 18 years. Some crazy number like that.
Wow. I didn't even know that
Yeah.
one. You coming up with all sorts of things here. Dave, it's also the Packers came in banged up and then just kept getting
they
more.
lost 2 receivers. Well, they didn't have Christian Watson.
They were missing their big threat coming in, and then they lost their next 2 and 2 offensive linemen.
And on a fourth down play in the fourth quarter, they throw it to a wide receiver named Heath, who's buried way down on the depth chart, and he had the 1 foot out of bounds. That's where the injuries hurt them.
For all the people that wanted Saquon to go for the record the week before, look, as you're watching that game yesterday, I was talking earlier, the path to the Super Bowl, and the NFL gives its first seed in each conference the biggest advantage of any first seed in any sport by far. And you have to win one less game, and all you have to do is win 2 home games and you're in the Super Bowl. But as big a part of that, of course, is an extra bye week in there. There's 6 other teams playing this weekend. The 2 first seeds are sitting at home for a week, and the Eagles had some guys go down. At one point, Slay went to the locker room. It looked a little scary. He came back. There were a couple other guys. CJ went out, and then. But the big injury, of course, is Nakobe Dean is now lost for the year, and it's just very, very unfortunate. And now a lot more pressure coming on Burks, and hopefully he's ready for it. I think he is, but it's a shame to lose Nakobe.
I think teams will target Oren Burks. They will target him in the passing game. Can he blitz as effectively as Nakobe Dean, who's been outstanding as a blitzer? I mean, there's a lot of things that Nakobe does better, in fact, than Oren Burks. But Oren does have the experience. He has been a big game player.
He started in last year's Super Bowl.
Started in last year's Super Bowl, so he will acquit himself well as he's done throughout the season. Another excellent free agent acquisition by General Manager Howie Roseman.
Listen, there's the common theme. You've heard it forever in the NFL, that next man up. But the Eagles have had the next man up step in and do incredibly all year long. I don't want to leave out a guy like Calcaterra, who did a super job and has really emerged to me as a much better player and a much better future than I thought he was going to have. But Dave, another thing on this offense and the way they go about it. I'm sorry, let me go to the defense. Vic Fangio, I know a lot about his philosophies from guys who have played for him or worked with him, and the way he looks at things and the way he talks to guys about it. And he always identifies, so he sits in the meetings and they're scouting the next opponent. He goes, all right, who's their threat? Who's the guy we have to worry about? And for the Green Bay Packers, it was Watson. Well, he wasn't there. And he always says, all right, if not, we're just going to make them have to grind it out. And that's what they were going to be able to do. And there were a couple of times Green Bay had some long drives, but they didn't beat them with anything long, and you never felt that they could.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Josh Jacobs is a terrific running back. I felt that also for the Packers, their one wide receiver whose name is escaping me at the moment. It was not Wicks.
Not Melton.
It was the guy, Jaden Reed, who had the big plays against the Eagles in Brazil in week 1. Also went out of the game yesterday.
He doesn't play very well in the United States, apparently.
No, he had a really good season. He's a good player.
He's
a fast guy.
He is a good
But when
player.
you have only one real vertical threat, it's much easier to contend with him than 2. And so Christian Watson not being there was a big loss. Eagles took away the deep passing game. The Packers had been among the top teams in the league in plus 50-yard passing plays. And so Philadelphia just had every answer. And you're right. It's Vic Fangio. Now, the one thing you said earlier, Gerald, is that Vic has a complicated system. If that's the case, explain to me how Cooper DeJean, a rookie, misses most of training camp, all but one game of the preseason, and then in game number 5 steps in a nickel and plays outstanding football.
I'd give it a couple things. Number one, he's that good, and he's that smart, and that much of a student of the game.
Cooper DeJean, also a guest on our show.
Thanks for adding that. But and just to add on those guests, every single guest who came in here all during this spectacular season was a phenomenal guest in every way. Smart, likable, such a great human being, and all the people out there. can feel so good about rooting for this Philadelphia Eagles team. The Eagles have put such an emphasis on character, and we saw it every week here, and I just appreciate that. So he's that good, number one, that smart, that much of a student. And I'm also going to give credit to the leaders around the team. He was coming in there and basically replacing Avonte Maddox, and Avonte knew it, but Cooper did tell us that Avonte really helped him, and Slay really helped him. So I just think it's the whole culture that is over there allowed these guys to step in and do the kind of job that they did all year.
And that is the key to victory in sports. It's not the talent that you have, because I would argue right now that Detroit's defense is decimated. Their top level players are out, but they still are productive. They have a great deal of chemistry, connection, mojo, whatever you want to call it. It's working for the Detroit Lions. And I'm telling you, for the Eagles, if you come into the building and you're not willing to be selfless, and if you're not willing to be team first, the Philadelphia Eagles have no reason to have you at the NovaCare complex. And I do agree that that is a big reason this team is so good. I want to throw one last stat before we take a little break here. It's 6:30. We're halfway through the show. I can't believe we've already gone through 30 minutes.
This goes.
Amazing, Gerald, when we get to just talk and talk and talk. Darius
You have no problem
Slay,
doing that.
Darius Big Play Slay, 28 interceptions in his career. Yesterday, the first in the playoffs. Amazing. And the first of his season.
Well, there are a couple things to say that.
I know he's in Detroit.
I'm going to say Detroit,
But
number one.
he's been in the playoffs.
but he's been here now for 4 years.
Yeah.
And look,
Went to the Super Bowl.
the guy just has a knack. Now, I do think there's something to the fact that this terrific player was so good for so long. The teams weren't throwing at him for a little while here, and maybe throw a different direction. But while he still played terrifically, I mean, look, Quinyon Mitchell, who you referred to earlier, who I believe is going to be the defensive rookie of the year in the NFL, he got his first pick in the NFL yesterday. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that teams just didn't throw to him because he's always there like a blanket. So Darius Slay he earned the big play Slay because he made big plays, and he made one yesterday. And I understand it's a little surprising. I'm surprised to hear that stat. I was not aware of that. Hopefully he gets more before the end of this year. Last point before we go to break. It goes back to the offense, and it goes back to sort of a Vic Fangio. I know from other people in that building that Vic Fangio, if he were to defend your own quarterback, Jalen Hurts, it's all about, because you said that those interesting statistics as to what he did without a blitz. It really is to pressure him, which is, obviously a way to play most quarterbacks, but also contain him. So it's all that pressure in the middle and contain it from stopping him from being able to scramble and move around.
Yeah.
Hopefully the other teams don't realize that and they're not able to do
a
it.
mush rush, similar to what the Eagles used to do against Michael Vick. It's similar to, he would play Jalen Hurts the same way that he played Lamar Jackson, Bryce Young, all these mobile quarterbacks that the Eagles have played and frankly have done really well against. Jaden Daniels is the lone exception. Jaden Daniels won that game from the pocket. He continued to win last night. Let's talk about the rest of the NFC playoff picture when we return.
We sure will. We might see Washington here for the conference championship. That's our shot to get a home game in the conference championship. That sure would be great. All right, we are on the All-Pro Philly Players Show. We are about halfway through. Dave Spadaro and Gerald Colton. We do not have an Eagles player this week because we are in the playoffs and have to be working and preparing already for next week's game. But maybe we'll have one before the end of the year. If not, we might have a former player. That's what I'm hoping for next week. You know what? I can announce who it is. I'll tell you after the break. You're listening to the All-Pro Philly Players Show. Dave Spadaro, Gerald Colton. We are live at Chickies and Pizza in Marlton, New Jersey. Stick around or come join us before 7 o'clock.
Fox Sports Radio, The Gambler. Now, total traffic for Philadelphia.
Couple of crashes to watch for. One in Upper Moreland, Easton Road at Mill Road. Another in Lower Salford, Fretz Road at Yoder Road. They're so busy on the eastbound Schuylkill, so Blue Route to Belmont and Montgomery Drive to South. Westbound Heavy University to Vine and City to Belmont. And Vine Expressway busy both ways, Schuylkill to Broad. 95 northbound back to cross Rock Point Bridge to Broad Street with Flyers volume. And then heavy Betsy Ross to Bridge, southbound so Copman to Bridge, and Walt Whitman to Broad Street. Lara Tutela, total traffic.
This report is sponsored by Stand Up to Cancer.
Joe Buck and John Smoltz welcoming you back to the City Center Convenience Mart. Uh-oh. She's looking at the cigarettes, but she just grabs the gum off the counter. Stand Up to Cancer and Rally want you to reduce your risk for cancer. Go to takeahealthystand.org.
Playoffs? We're talking about playoffs? You bet we are. Hey, Sean Brace for DraftKings Sportsbook It's time to get in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Scoring touchdowns is a key to winning in the playoffs, and you can score big by betting on them at DraftKings, the number one place to bet touchdowns. Are you ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple like a player to score 6. Just go to DraftKings Sportsbook app now and make your pick. New DraftKings customers, you can bet just $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. All you got to do is just download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use promo code BRACE. That's code BRACE for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. And it's only at DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. 21 plus, Pennsylvania only. Eligibility restrictions apply. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio.
T-Mobile 5G home internet keeps getting better. Get our fastest connection loaded with benefits. Get T-Mobile's best home internet starting at $55 a month with auto pay and any voice line. Plus, Price Lock. We won't raise your rate on internet. Check availability at T-Mobile.com/home internet.
Exclusions like taxes and fees apply. Guarantees regular monthly rate plan price of fixed wireless 5G internet data with qualifying service. After $15 bill credit with postpaid voice line plus $5 a month without auto pay with debit or bank account. Regulatory fees included for qualifying accounts. $35 connection charge applies. Speeds vary due to factors affecting cellular networks.
Now's the time to shop limited time doorbuster deals during Pro Savings Days at Lowe's. Save $50 on a Little Giant King Combo 6-foot ladder. Was $199, now $149. Plus, save $100 on a DeWalt XR 20-volt Power Stack 5 amp-hour battery. Was $199, now $99. Get these can't-miss deals now before they're gone. Lowe's knows savings. Lowe's knows pros. Doorbusters valid 1/13 through 1/15. Selection varies by location while supplies last.
You turned your dating app for pets into a business, which just turned over its first billion. You turned around the fortunes of a failing football club. Politely turned down a Nobel Peace Prize, and turned up on Mars in your own reusable rocket. All while struggling to turn on the dishwasher. There's more to imagine when you listen. Discover business development titles on Audible.
Hey, man, you all right? Need me to call 911? No. Call Top Dog Law. Get top dollar for your accident at topdoglaw.com. Once again, that's topdoglaw.com.
Welcome back to Chickies and Pizza Marlton and the All-Pro Philly Player Show. I'm Gerald Colton along with Dave Spadera. We flew through that first segment so far that we went way into what should be the second segment, Dave. But there is so much to talk about yesterday's game and the season, and now we're going to look a little bit around the rest of the NFC and what's ahead for the Eagles.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting picture. Washington, very impressive last night with its win over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and Jaden Daniels continues to do it. He is the real deal. He is going to be someone the Eagles are going to keep an eye on very intently for the next 10 years as the Washington Commanders return to NFL significance and potentially here prominence. He's really, really poised. His mobility is outstanding. His touch from the pocket, his game awareness, Gerald, is very impressive.
He's done so much he is the overall rookie of the year, it seems, for sure. And he's just been really great and had a number of last-second victories for them, which really says a lot about him as a rookie, one of which, of course, was against the Philadelphia Eagles.
I will tell you that I would expect Washington to struggle in a big way against the Detroit Lions. That is a rested Lions team. That is an offensive juggernaut. The defense, not great. I just don't know if Washington has enough defensively to give the Detroit Lions problems. Your thoughts?
Well, my client is a cornerback or defensive backs coach for the Commanders. So it's the only part of Washington that I like because I sure as hell don't root for their owner.
Right.
And I am a little bit salivating at the thought of the Eagles beating the Commanders here in Philadelphia to win the NFC Championship and looking at Josh Harris. Now, that being said, and my little personal preference out of there, I think that Detroit has to be pretty happy getting them. One of the things that always strikes me, Dave, by the way, about the playoffs, and you know this feeling so well, that this whole season goes along, and then you're all excited for this game, and then in 3 hours, bang, it's over, and the whole season is just – and it's not like any other sport where you have series that go on, and you get to see it play out. This is just it's such sudden death each round. And Yesterday, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers experienced that because they had a fumble late in the game, driving what they thought would be the last score, and then doink. I mean, the Eagles won a playoff game a few years ago in Chicago, doinked the
Double
kick
doink.
off, and then this one doinks in for Washington.
Isn't it interesting that in all of the statistics in the NFL, and there are so many of them, the one that consistently matters the most is the turnover ratio. And when you see the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Baker Mayfield put a handoff into the back hip of a running back, you go, there's something to be said for pressure in the NFL. And I feel like in that instance, it got to Baker, it got to the Bucs, and it eventually cost them a chance to come to Philadelphia for the divisional round. And I got to tell you, I'm glad. I didn't really want to see Todd Bowles again. He has done a number on the Philadelphia Eagles offense.
Well, it's interesting. I always go right to turnovers on a stat sheet because 9 times out of 10, it's going to determine it. And then multiple turnovers, even closer to 10 out of 10. It's really incredible. And you don't even have to watch a game. It's just strange things happen that make that a victory. And if yesterday for the Eagles, it was 4-0 in their favor. And here we are in round 2. As you talk about what is ahead in these playoffs. So instead of getting the who you thought could get the Bucs coming in with Todd Bowles, who's done well against us, used to coach here, knows his team, but we haven't done well against Baker Mayfield per se, even though, I still think I take my chances playing here. Those games are down in Tampa. You now get the winner of this game tonight that's going to happen in about an hour or so. And you got the LA Rams under weird circumstances playing against the Minnesota Vikings. Both of them come in a little bit probably hurt from the last week. One is the Vikings had this terrific season, played for the number 1 seed, the division championship conference best record, and got crushed in Detroit last week. That has to be a little bit reeling from that because now they have to win 3 road games in a sense to go to the
a marvelous season. All those wins, and they're on the road as the 5th seed. Thanks, NFL.
It really, but that's what happens, and that's how quickly your season can turn. It could have happened to Detroit just as easily, although they played very well in their last game. And then, of course, you've got LA. I mean, look, we got to take a second, and everybody's paying homage to what's going on in LA. It's horrific. They've had to move the game, and I just can't imagine that the Rams have really been able to focus on football this week.
I have many friends out there, several of whom have had to evacuate. They're in fear of their homes, everything they own, their financial future, the way the government will, respond. I mean, there's just so many things. Loss of human life. It is just far transcends what is going on the football field. And these young athletes who, many of whom are, think about 22, 23, 24 years old. What were you doing when you were 22, 23, 24 years old? You certainly weren't balancing a family, home ownership, a professional career, and a raging inferno that's been gobbling just acres and acres of homeland and constructions of $1 million homes. And just so it has to be very unsettling, not just for the Rams, everybody in the organization. So to make that move to go to Arizona, it impacts your practice, it impacts your routine, and also it impacts the Minnesota Vikings, who were set for LA, and now they're in Arizona, and it helps the Vikings. This is a neutral environment, and I'm sure that there are Vikings. I'm sure that tonight it will be a pro Minnesota Vikings crowd, and that's why I believe the Vikings will win the game. I'd like to see the Rams next week, but I do believe the Vikings will win the game tonight.
Well, it gives them a much bigger advantage than they otherwise would have had going into LA for this. And, Dave, you said, what was I doing at 22 type thing, 22 to 24. I've been watching this and I have lots of friends in the area, but no one directly impacted. Like they're friends of my friends, but no one directly. And yet I've watched these horrible news clips and reports, and they've really moved me to tears. It's that sad to watch. And I do remember, as you're saying that about what was happening 22 to 24, I was actually in law school at Rutgers Camden Law School, across the river from Philadelphia. And during my first year in law school, second semester finals, Philadelphia burnt down. It was literally right then
was in college.
Was when Wilson Good had dropped the bomb on the Move House, and then the whole block burned down. And I'm just talking. That was just a 1 day impact, or 1 day fire, and then an impact over time that actually is still impacting a little bit from a financial and city standpoint and political and criminal standpoint. But I was so distracted just watching that. I couldn't keep my eyes off it because the smoke was all over the place, and it was just real tragic and a lot of loss of life. But that was nothing greater. So you just reminded me of an inferno that did happen in Philadelphia right when I was 22, 24. But I certainly
Contained to one city block, though, right?
Yeah, but when they dropped the incendiary device, they weren't expecting that to happen, and why they didn't contemplate the fact that these row houses were all attached to each other,
Right.
and
There was actually human life down there.
and they didn't fight the fire. I mean, they thought they'd bring them out. Instead, they killed them. It was horrible. Let's not go backward in time. Not to that time anyway. But we had a big thing happen in Philadelphia that I do want to talk about for a second before we then come back and finish with football, and that is the Sixers in the city. They didn't really come out right away and announce it, but it leaked, and now it's been announced that the
Weird
Sixers.
timing, wasn't it?
Well,
just as everybody was tailgating for yesterday's game, word leaks out that the 76ers, Gerald, had a big 180-degree reversal.
Well, I don't trust anything that comes out of the Philadelphia 76ers. Flat out, just don't. And I have good reason not to. I never thought the move should happen, and I think 99% of the people in the city, if not more, agree with that thought. And it didn't make sense from a city standpoint at all. Place to go, and the Sixers wanted to ruin that. Now, I don't blame them for wanting their own building, and I felt that Comcast should have gotten ahead of this thing years ago when they decided to refurbish what is now the Wells Fargo Center. It's been a few things else during its existence of 30 years, but I felt that they should have at that point done something together with the Sixers, because the Sixers bought the team from Comcast when they owned both the teams, the Flyers, Sixers, and the building, but they we're never going to want to be tenants forever and be second-class citizens. So it's just a shame they didn't work it out before. It's a shame they put the city through all this. It's a shame to watch the mayor and city council act like it's the greatest thing for the city for them to move, and now act like it's the greatest thing for the
But
city
at
not
the
to
end
move.
of the day,
And that's what matters. The rest of
it's a great move for everyone.
It is a great move in the long run. You wish it could be done a little bit more above board. So when you say stuff like, interesting that it leaked out, during the 4 o'clock hour or so.
It was usually a Friday news dump.
And that as someone involved in the news,
yes.
as a journalist for all these years, that is like, okay, when can we put it out and get the least fair
News strategist. A couple of things that caught my eye. Interesting that the idea that Roger Goodell would get involved. Why do you think that is, Gerald? I have a theory. Why do you think that is?
I want to hear yours, and they're probably somewhat similar. The fact is that each team is part of a partnership between its league and its sponsors and television networks. So, and the biggest revenue in all sports is television revenue. The National Football League blows everything away, as we know, and they make revenue off of their properties and seat sales and the merchandise type stuff. But it is largely television money that drives everything. And Comcast, the owner of NBC and other affiliates that are involved, what do we have now? Peacock streaming games, is a partner of the National Football League, as well as the other 3 sports leagues. And they all had an interest in making this work. It did not make sense for Comcast, the owners of the Flyers and the Wells Fargo Center, to be competing with the owners of the Sixers for a lot of dollars that could be shared and better spent in one area. And I think it was just the best interest of Comcast, and the other leagues joined in because it was also Adam Silver, who's the commissioner of the league in which the Sixers play, and wanting them to stay there. So he's going against his own club. And is it because he wants to support NBC also? I think that's a part of it.
How about this?
Go ahead.
When
you didn't agree with my theories, so go ahead.
No. Maybe there's something to that. I don't know. 2 things. One, Josh Shapiro said that there would be no state funding.
That's the Sixers' interest, so more than the leagues.
Okay, hang on. The Sixers, their plan was to go, we're going to do this private funding.
As long as the state chips
Roger
in.
Goodell, recognizing that at some point the Eagles are going to want a new stadium here.
No question.
We don't want any precedent set that is going to be privately funded.
I think there's a lot to that theory. I think that can combination. I do believe he wants to make sure Comcast is happy. That is a major partner of the National Football League that provides a lot of dollars for the NBC package and all the other stuff. But I think your point is very, very good because it is important. The NFL has new stadium funding. And it's an interesting point you bring up, Dave, about the Sixers at some point or the Eagles at some point wanting a new stadium because that stadium now is 25 years old.
Yeah.
And
22.
I guess you opened into, but they've been building it since the late 90s, early 2000s. So at some point, you're right. We're still probably at least a decade away, but we are sometime. And you're right. I mean, all these, because when those stadiums, Citizens Bank Park and Lincoln Financial were built, it was part of a deal with the state where Pittsburgh and Philadelphia each got 2 new stadiums because they were playing in that one cookie cutter stadium of Three Rivers Stadium.
And they're going to need a new stadium too.
And but those stadiums were funded a third by the clubs, a third by the cities, and a third by the state. So with no public funding whatsoever, I think you're right. Now, the Sixers are in a situation where they have a consortium of, 6, 7, at least 10 plus billionaires. So it's really, whatever they do is really not that much to them.
You're setting a precedent.
But you're correct. And I think that's a very, very good theory. I think my theory is merit too.
Yes.
And it's probably
a combination of both.
It's definitely a combination
But
of
at the end of the day, as a Sixers fan, even though I know you're an angry Sixers fan right now.
Is there anyone who's not?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
And by the way, Joel Embiid out for the Thunder game, whenever that is.
Tomorrow night.
Fifth straight game, foot sprain.
I do want to say something, and then we're going to get off the Sixers because I get too upset.
It's a football show.
I know it's a football show, but I'm going to tie it into football a little bit. The Sixers signed Paul George in the offseason, who's 35 years old, never won anything, to I think it was a 4-year, $50-ish million a year, so like 4-year, $200 million contract. He said this week that he is bored playing center, and of course he's playing some center with Joel Embiid out of line, as he always says. He's bored. Jimmy Butler, who used to be here and now wants to get out of Miami, said they have taken the joy of playing basketball out of him, and he's in the second to last year of a contract that pays him $50 million a year. So these are two guys. Now, juxtaposed against what you're talking about in LA and things like that, to hear these guys talk about the joy is out of basketball and I'm bored playing basketball. And the guy who's saying he's bored playing basketball plays for a team that wants us to pay huge amounts of money to go watch him play while he's bored. I'm just outraged, and you would never, ever hear an NFL player say anything close to that, or he'd be a former NFL player just like that.
Gerald, there's nothing I can say that disputes any of that. I agree 100% with you. I think that NFL players play, they love the game, they know it's a very limited time, they know that if they don't earn it, they're going to get cut, and I think that's the way you run a sports league. The NBA is all guaranteed money, and the money is outrageous, and players run the league, and that is the way it is.
And that's what they've allowed to happen in the NFL, or in the NBA rather. No, look, there's reasons for it. There's very few players. It is very star-driven. They're very visible. Most people, we had our players come through here every week, and everybody loves the Philadelphia Eagles. Everybody watches the Philadelphia Eagles, and most people wouldn't even recognize the guy walking down the street. It is very different in basketball. And, of course, there's so few players playing in the NBA compared to other sports, but it's just gotten way out of control. And Adam Silver, who seems like a very nice man and a very bright man, I think he has let the players get way out of control and sort of run that asylum. And it would not happen under Roger Goodell's watch. And Roger Goodell takes a lot of criticism. And I'm not always his biggest supporter, but he wouldn't let his league get turned upside down like that. Anyway, back to football and the Philadelphia Eagles as we head to the champion or the division champion round games ahead with one game to play that very much impacts us because the winner of that game comes here Sunday. So how do you look at who would you prefer seeing? I know expect probably Minnesota to win. Are you happy with that matchup?
Yeah, I'm fine with Minnesota. I think that Brian Flores, their defensive coordinator, would blitz Jalen Hurts a lot. That is his MO against every quarterback. That is something to contend with. The Vikings have a really good defense. Now, we saw them last week against Detroit, cracks in the armor. When you play a big game, a pressure game, maybe we saw the real Minnesota Vikings, and the Vikings did not play a good game at all in Detroit. And obviously, they have a tough time in the recent past of playing in Philadelphia. So I am fine if it is the Minnesota Vikings. I am more fine if it is the Rams. I think the Rams are a team that the Eagles handled this year. I think the Rams are a defensive-oriented team, good front, good pass rush. Eagles generally gobble those kinds of teams up. I believe offensively, the Eagles can overwhelm them at the line of scrimmage. I respect their wide receivers, as I do Minnesota. So I'm really fine honestly, with both teams. I'm hoping for tonight a very, very physical game, a long game. If it's overtime, hey, I'm fine with that too. Both of those teams are at a significant disadvantage, playing on a short week, coming to Philadelphia on Sunday. Primetime game, 3 o'clock. It's perfect for the Eagles fans who will have a good time getting ready for the game, and the atmosphere will be intense at Lincoln Financial Field. I like this matchup no matter who it is, Gerald. I believe it will be Minnesota, but I'm rooting for LA tonight.
And that's good reason. I have learned a long time ago, I can't control any of this stuff, of course, whatever happens on the field, just to kind of accept it as it comes along. But I'm with you in my same feeling. By the same token, whoever they get, they have to beat whoever's in front of them. And no matter what happens this week coming up, they're going to have 2 really tough games ahead of them if they get that far. So we'll take them as they come, and you got to beat everybody in front of you. Also, have you read any good books lately? I was just going to say, go. It's just always interesting things going around the Philadelphia Eagles.
Any best-selling books?
They're about to be, yes, no question about it. But the reason I brought it was you are the proud owner of 2 conference championship rings,
yes,
as well as 1 Super Bowl champion ring, and I hope you get another one, really do. But I brought that to show you. That's
beautiful.
1983, 42 years ago. The Sixers are going to hopefully not have to wait another 42 years, but it's not happening anytime soon either.
It just slides on perfectly.
I guess your fingers are smaller than mine, but anyway,
thinner, less sodium in my fingers, longer than yours. My hands are larger than yours.
Are they? They probably are.
I don't think so. No, it's a beautiful ring.
But it's a wearable ring, and I brought it's gold, the old yellow gold with a diamond in the center, and a whole lot of things on it. Faux, which is Moses mantra, and defense, and a whole bunch of things. It's a real.
Glad you wore it. It looks great on you.
My uncle is my guy. I miss him. He passed away a few years ago. I miss him terribly, and I wear this on certain occasions in his memory and his honor.
Does it impress the ladies?
No, but it's on my finger. Maybe yours. I mean, maybe the ring does, but nothing else about the person wearing it does. But no matter what, Dave, that ring you have is so spectacular. But I feel like they've gotten out of control because it's really hard to wear. How many times have you worn it?
That's the idea. 0. Never. I never wear my Super Bowl ring. It is described as a 10-table ring, meaning when you walk into a restaurant, and I'm being serious, the people from 10 tables away will recognize the ring. And Jeffrey the players wanted it to be the gaudiest ring that could possibly be made. 219 diamonds. Street value at the time was $24,000. But of course, it's the only one, so it's priceless.
It means more than any money could buy, of course. That's how I feel.
It's locked away in my office drawer and very, very safe.
I was in the locker room with the Sixers in LA, pouring champagne over Moses Malone and Julius Erving's head back on May 31st, 1983. And they got to ride in the Super Bowl parade. Now, you, of course, got to MC the greatest championship parade in Philadelphia history. And
yes, I did. I'm hoping for another one. And I was lined up for 2022, and the Kansas City Chiefs broke my heart.
All right, well, let's get it done this year. One last thing, Dave, because I could go on with you forever. This is like our phone conversation, except hopefully somebody's hearing this one. And even though, where's our picture up here?
Yeah,
John. Anyway, our video wasn't, I guess, working here today. Oh, it's on that small computer. Everybody coming to the DJ booth. With regard to a significant thing happening tomorrow, it's something you somewhat referenced in an analogy without you were even making the analogy. Tomorrow is the final vote for the 2025 Pro Football Hall of Fame class, and it will be 5 people from the current, what they call the modern era, or people who've been like retired only 20 years, and there's going to be like some long-term or old-time type guys. There is a couple of Philadelphia nearby or close to our hearts people. One is Eric Allen, who was the guy They don't do the ringing the bell, the link for the game, but he was the guy.
He's our honorary captain.
Okay, honorary captain, and he's singing.
He leads the fight song. He does the coin flip, and a great cornerback. You forget that Eric Allen was only 5 feet 9.5 tall, 185 pounds. I think he made 6 Pro Bowls. He was an All-Pro 2 or 3 times. He was a lockdown cornerback. Never switched over to safety. Played very little zone. Was great taking the football away. 54 interceptions in his career.
Incredible.
8 returned for touchdowns.
4 of which were in one season.
4 wins one season. It came into the league as an immediate starter in 1988, before you were born, Gerald, and finished his career, I believe, in 2000. 14 years in the NFL, and he had 6 interceptions that year with the Raiders. So, I mean, a remarkable run of consistency. And Eric Allen, for the second consecutive season, is a finalist, and we are wishing the very best for Eric Allen.
And the process works like this, Dave. They have, out of all the people who have to reach a certain standard, about 125, they vote. There's 50 guys, just like you said, just similar, very, very similar to the All-Pro team. And they vote to get it down to 25 semifinalists. Then from there, they pare it down to 15 finalists. And then tomorrow, they'll be in a room. It's now a Zoom room, unfortunately. And I say that because it loses something over a Zoom meeting, talking to a lot of the voters. But different guys will make their pitches for guys. Paul Domowitch is going to make his pitch for Eric Allen, who was such an important part of the Buddy Ride defense. Well, I have an interesting anecdote with Eric Allen, was just a terrific person and still is, of course, and somebody we'd all love to see get into the Hall of Fame. And he represents the Philadelphia Eagles very, very well. He did play with New Orleans and Oakland, as you said. But one game he's playing up at the Meadowlands against the Jets, Eagles against the Jets. Randall Cunningham got hurt that game. He's standing in the tunnel with crutches. Eric Allen intercepts a pass and returns all the way and sort of turned the game around. It was like 101-yard return. I had a field pass and was watching on the Jets sideline because my client, Boomer Esiason, was a quarterback who threw that interception. So for me, it was both a crushing moment and an uplifting moment because I loved Eric. And after the game, I was down in the tunnel, and Eric said, "Hey, can you give me a ride home? I don't really feel like riding the bus." So I drove Eric home from the Meadowlands that day, along with and Andre Waters came with us. They were just some great guys from the past. Another guy who's very close and near and dear to my heart, to Philadelphia's heart, to Fox Sports, the Gambler's heart, because he used to be my co-host when we started the All-Pro Philly Player Show. He put the All-Pro in the All-Pro Philly Player Show. That's Jari Evans. He's from Philadelphia, Frankfurt High, went to Bloomsburg, spent 11 of his 12 years in New Orleans, the other year in Green Bay. He is rated as the best guard to ever play the game who's not in the Hall of Fame. And hopefully tomorrow that changes. He's up against it.
We won't know the results until the weekend of the Super Bowl.
Correct. They announce it probably that Saturday.
And they will not be told until the president of the Pro Football Hall of Fame knocks on their door and informs them that they've made it. So it is Eric was really nervous yesterday, very excited. I think understanding that it could be a long shot for him to make it, but hopeful that he does get to the Hall of Fame. In his second year, and he's only got one more year where he can be a finalist.
The problem is he's at the end of the road, and that is a difficult thing, and it's just unfortunate. All these guys that are up for finalists are phenomenal and have had incredible I would careers.
say Eli Manning was not phenomenal.
Well, he
just won 2 Super Bowls, but otherwise he was not phenomenal.
He is a very controversial figure. He's sort of the lightning rod, polarizing. Some people very much feel he deserves it. Some people do not, and we will see which way that goes. But there's also Jared Allen up and Marshall Yanda, Adam Vinatieri, and a whole bunch of others. Yeah. And hopefully in those final 5 will be Eric Allen and my guy, Jari Evans. So anyway, there's still more to talk about. Prediction on tonight's game.
I'm going to go Minnesota 28, Los Angeles 24.
Okay, that's a good and high scoring game. I've got it more like, but I have Minnesota as well. I'd say more 24-13. We'll see who won last week. The big one, of course, will be next Sunday. We'll be here next Monday talking about as Eagles go into the division round. They are at home again at Lincoln Financial, and let's shoot for another victory Monday. So appreciate you, of course.
Thanks, Gerald. Great job.
John Jansen.
Thanks,
Whoever's
John.
back in the studio, is it Nick? Nick back in the studio. Our fine staff
Thanks,
here
Nick.
at Chickies and Pizza in Marlton, New Jersey, our proprietors, the Cherokees, and we appreciate all of you. Chickies and Pizza, where the players go, the best place for food and drink, all the games, and you could come here and watch the Monday night game between the Rams and the Vikings tonight that will determine next week's Eagles opponent. You've got the Rutgers Scarlet Knights playing UCLA in basketball. That's become painful for me, and a whole bunch of other things on here at Chickies and Pete's, as always. So on behalf of Dave Spadaro, I'm Gerald Cohen saying thanks for listening. Thanks for joining us at Chickies and Pete's. We'll see you next week. Go Birds.
It's the Daily Ticket with Sean Brace, 3 to 6 p.m. Monday to Friday.
And it's tough because, like, here you are, James Franklin at half, and you did essentially, we could use the word dominate that first half. That was your first half. You won that first half. What do you expect him to change? Right? Like, when they are the more dominating team, defensively slowing everything down, Notre Dame not able to get anything going, what do you expect James Franklin and that coaching staff to go in and say, all right, well, this worked, but we're going to change it? That's not how it works. So I got to give so much credit to Notre Dame saying, in the second half, we got to get back to what got us here, being aggressive, running it down their throats, and they did.